He was in a despicable situation. He could have sat there with his lips poked out and said, you know, they did me wrong. I ain't even supposed to be here. I don't even think it's right that they got me here. Somebody called Johnny Cochran. But Paul bore up his cross, and he understood that it was an opportunity to spread the gospel. Paul had the complete faith that recognized that even in the midst of his storm, even in his trouble, even in his trial, that God had given him opportunity. And though it wasn't convenient, though it may not have been the choice that he would have made, Paul understood that I have an opportunity to go forth and spread the gospel. You see, we have to understand that when we're going through, when we're in the midst of this trial, as we develop this faith, and hopefully you develop the faith before the trouble, you have to understand that there's some things that we have to understand, that we have to grasp in order to get through trouble. We have to understand that we have to believe, we have to understand, we have to grasp that God is a good God, and that everything that he allows to happen to you, he has a purpose for it. Now, it may not be what we would have chosen for ourselves, but everything that God allows us to go through, he has a divine purpose. You see, we have to understand we are not our own, but we were bought with a price. And God will use us to glorify him however he sees fit. We may not see the end game, but God has a plan. The second thing we have to understand, we have to believe that God is at work and he's working things out for our good. Now, I know folks who say, well, you know, they pull that scripture out of Romans, all things work together for good for those who love God, for those who are called according to his purposes. Some folks will say, yeah, well, that must mean that everything is good. As young folks say, it's all good. No, it ain't all good. Because some of that stuff we went through, we probably, if we had chosen not to go through it. But God will take that bad situation, that jacked up situation, and he will allow some good to come out of it. It may not have been intended for good. It might have been intended for evil. But God will use us in the midst of that so that his name will be glorified. Well, how you know that, preacher? Ask Joseph. Here, Joseph went from Potiphar's house to the jailhouse to the king's house. Didn't know everywhere that he went was preparing him for the next place he was getting ready to go. I'm quite sure that he would have chosen different for his life had he had the opportunity to choose, but God had a plan, and his plan was that somebody was going to be in place to make sure that his promise was fulfilled to Abraham. We have to believe, we must believe, we have to grasp that God will not permit impossible burdens to come upon us. That he'll put no more on you than you can bear. When you're in the middle of that storm and you think, oh, Lord, I can't take this, we had to believe that if God didn't believe we could handle it, he wouldn't have allowed it to come. It's amazing to me that some folks who get a little bit of adversity go find a pistol and want to take their own lives because they can't bear the burden. I couldn't understand why this man, the number 3 man at AIG, who was making all that money, who went through all them changes because things got shaky, waited for the family to leave to go out in the garage and take his own life. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, you had everything. But he didn't have faith. If God allows you to go through it, he's got a purpose for it. And you know, and then I hate to tell you this, but like I said, I don't want you to be ignorant. Sometimes God may not choose to tell you why you're going through what you're going through. Sometimes you just got to go through, and he may reveal it, he may not reveal it. But we have to trust him that when we can't see his hand, that we can trust his heart. We must have faith to believe that there may be a redemptive process in some of our suffering. So sometimes we go through some stuff that we wondering why are we going through. God's got a plan. He's got a plan. And when we don't understand it, we have to trust that. If you want to get through difficult times, you want to get through troubles, you want to make it through when the bottom falls out, you got to face life with real faith. The second thing that you got to do when we dealing with when the bottom falls out, we got to avoid faulty ways of facing tragedy. Well, what do you mean by that, preacher? You see, some of us respond in ways that are counterproductive to what God is trying to do.
Yes, sir.
Well, what do you mean? I don't understand it. See, some folks get into a tragic situation, and the first thing they start dealing with guilt.
Well,
oh, if only I had done this. Or if only I hadn't done that. Please understand, some stuff you going through, you ain't had nothing to do with it. Oh, if only I didn't eat this, and if I'd ate that, I wouldn't be going through what I'm going through. No, that's not necessarily true. I wish I could say that everything that we go through has a direct cause, has something that we can point to. That's not always the case. A lot of stuff that we go through, we have no control over. How did I know I was going to be in that accident? Oh, if I'd have left 5 minutes earlier. Oh, if I'd have went 10 minutes later. Some of that stuff you just have no control over. And you can't go around feeling guilty about if only. The second thing is we can't react to tragedy with bitterness and hatred.